Invincible is the best comic book series this world has to offer, and that's an opinion I firmly believe in. Throughout the 144 issues, I couldn't help but keep my eyes glued to the pages. This story, brilliantly written by Robert Kirkman and beautifully illustrated by Cory Walker and Ryan Ottley, brings to life a complete narrative and world building you won't want to escape. I'm in love with this collection, and I'm excited to share with you. Without further ado, here's my thoughts and the ultimate recap of Image Comics series Invincible. So our story revolves around a teenage Mark Grayson, the son of Debbie Grayson and Nolan Grayson. What makes Mark special is his relationship with his father, who is secretly known as Omni-Man, Earth's greatest superhero. Ever since Mark was 7, he knew just like his father he developed powers of his own. Super strength, speed, flight, and vulnerability, and he anticipated this his whole childhood. One day while at his job, Burger Mart, taking out the trash, he struggled a little tossing the first bag over, but on the second, he launched it into the sky with ease. His powers had finally kicked in. He casually mentioned this to his parents over dinner to absolutely no surprise. Excited, he goes to his roof to take a leap of faith and flies. The next day, he puts together a makeshift suit and starts patrolling the streets. He catches after some bank robbers led by Superhuman Titan, who forms a rocky outer shell, with minor property damage. His father finds him after and makes fun of his outfit, but tells him he'd like to introduce him to his tailor. Later at school, Mark gets in a fight with a bully and shoves him into a locker. At the principal's office, he is inspired at the name Invincible. He catched another group of goons robbing a bank and sports the iconic yellow, black, and blue. The next issue starts with Nolan explaining where he comes from. He was born on the planet Viltrum, where the people possess superhuman abilities and have reached a perfect society without conflict. They set to expand the Empire to other planets, and Nolan became a member of the World Betterment Committee. He was stationed on Earth and swore to protect its people. He met Debbie, and the rest was history. Mark, dreaming about flying, can't contain himself and goes out at night. He encounters one of the Mauler twins, these two buff super genius villains who clone themselves. He stops them from stealing, and mid-fight, the teen team arrives. We're introduced to Robot, Adam Eve, Rexplode, and Duplicate, who help take the twins down. The next day at school, Mark runs into Adam Eve, and they talk about being superheroes. She brings him to the teen team's hideout, where Robot has been tracking the Mauler twins. The three of them fly out to the twins' base and stop their scheme. At the same time, a man strapped with a bomb explodes in a shopping mall. The next day at school, the principal gives a speech over the bombing incident, and Mark and Eve catch up. She reminds him she's dating Rex and to keep an eye out after a second bombing. Later at Burger Mart, Mark decides to quit his job. When he does the dishes with his dad, he suggests to anyways. The next day, Mark's getting ready to patrol when his dad walks in and offers to tag along. They suit up and go flying, and then to lunch, where they talk about Mark's powers. Then Nolan's beeper goes off, and the two make their way to the invading Flaxen army, an alien race from another dimension who want to conquer Earth. They fight until the Flaxens start to rapidly age, dying off before them. They regroup in the sky, and after a minute, Nolan gets another beeper, and they rush to the mall. Nolan takes a dude strapped with a bomb and chucks him into the air to explode. Right after, a portal appears and the Flaxens take Nolan. Issue number 4. Mark goes to the teen team hideout looking for Eve, trying to figure out how the bombings are connected. At home, Debbie worries about Nolan, and Mark comforts her. At school, Mark and Eve talk about the bombings, and during class, the teacher calls them out and says lovebirds. So Mark corrects him about it. And they're like, that was uncomfortable. Eve gets a call from Robot, who figured out who's behind the bombings, their physics teacher. So Mark and Eve go to his house to stop him. Later at home, Nolan returns to the family and has dinner. Issue number 5. Mark gets a phone call from his father warning him of an incoming threat from space. He says it'll be their toughest fight yet, so be prepared, and Mark finds out he can hold his breath for long durations. He flies off to space and meets Alan the alien, where they fight a little while before landing on the moon. They talk and find out Alan's been traveling to the wrong planet. He's a champion evaluation officer for the Coalition of Planets and tests people whose job is to defend their planets from orbital threats. He's been going to Earth instead of Urath. They shake hands and Alan flies off. Mark goes home tired but still has homework, so he sighs. Issue number 6. Mark and his father play catch in the sky, throwing a baseball around the planet. They talk about the Flaxons and keeping a secret identity, and catch up until Mark's friend William arrives to drive down to college. Meanwhile, Robot announces to the teen team he'll be joining the Guardians of the Globe. They tour the college and talk about what it's going to be like, and after a while, as they sit down on a bench to talk some more, a robot zombie bursts through a wall, sending the school to a panic. Mark flies off and suits up to take down the creature. As he moves people out of harm's way, the robot leaps and impales itself on a statue. William figures out Mark is invincible. Later, Mark and his father visit Art, the suit tailor. He informs him of his suit that's gone missing. Meanwhile, Eve catches Rex cheating on her with Duplicate. Issue number 7. Mark catches some sleep, and in a location cursed by a mad magician called Midnight City, we see Darkwing taking scum. He gets an alert to return to the Guardians of the Globe headquarters. We see Red Rush in Moscow saving people when he also gets an alert. War Woman and Aquarius gets alerts, and the same with Green Ghost and Martian Man. Finally, the Immortal gets called, and all the Guardians meet up. When they arrive, they're all confused about who called the meeting. Suddenly, in the blink of an eye, they're all violently slaughtered by no other than Omni-Man. Issue number 8. Nolan speaks to Damien Darkblood, a demon detective, about the incident. He dodges suspicion and makes a case about Black Samson's suit gone missing, which sends him on his way. Comes home to Eve crying in his room. She tells him about Rex cheating. The next day, at school, Mark gets passed a note by a girl named Amber. He also says hi to one of the bombing survivors. After school, Mark takes out the elephant, and at home, Nolan prepares for the Guardians of the Globe ceremony, where he gives a speech. The Mauler twins show up peacefully, which surprises the other superheroes, and then Black Samson's butler appears in the missing suit. He goes crazy for a second, but quickly gets stopped, and after things settle, they go home. Mark reads the note from Amber, and William shows up, letting Mark know he knows he's invincible, and wants to go flying. In bed, Debbie notices Nolan hasn't been himself lately. That night, gravediggers dig up the Immortal, and the Mauler twins steal his body. Issue number 9. In space, Alan makes his way back to Earth, and saves a ship about to hit a star. Meanwhile, Mark watches movies with his dad. We meet Cecil Stedman, head of the Global Defense Agency, as he speaks with Robot about organizing a replacement for the Guardians of the Globe. Nolan sits atop a mountain, contemplating how to speak to Mark about everything. At school, Mark catches up with Eve, and they go patrolling. Together they take out the Lizard League, and we see Eve secretly likes Mark afterwards. They head to Robot's auditions. Rexplode picks on a little girl who, to his surprise, has the ability to transform into a monster. Invincible needs to break up with the fight, and after the auditions go smoothly, the new Guardians of the Globe are announced to be Duplicate, Shrinking Ray, Monster Girl, Black Samson, and Rexplode. Later that night, Amber comes over to study with Mark. Eve catches them kissing and flies off. The Mauler twins at their secret base have been working to resurrect the Immortal under their control. They revive him, but he just goes ballistic, flying, screaming, and looking for Omni-Man. Issue number 10. Mark faces off against Doc Seismic, a college professor gone insane, with earth-shattering seismic bracelets. They hit each other until Doc Seismic falls into a cavern. Later that night, Nolan tries to talk to Mark, but Mark dismisses him. At school, Mark tells William him and Eve are just friends, and he has Amber. Nolan tells Debbie he's been picking up the Guardian's slack. Damien Darkblood investigates the crime scene. Black Samson visits his butler in prison. Mark goes to the comic book convention. Meanwhile, his dad keeps saving the planet. Omni-Man fights a monster until the Immortal shows up to confront him. They start fighting, and he demands answers. Mark sees it on the news and decides to head over. He watches as his father tears the Immortal in half. Shocked, he faces his dad, who wants to talk. Issue number 11. Omni-Man tells Mark that it's finally time to tell him the truth. He's really from the planet Viltrum, but the story is very different. Viltrumites culled the weak from their race, with only the strongest surviving. After they set to expand the Empire by forming a world-conquering committee, Nolan was stationed on Earth to take over for the Empire. He tells Mark when he came to Earth, he had to live as a human, and he was faking his life, living a lie. He became a hero of the planet, but that was a facade. He said he was happy, but it couldn't last, so he took his first steps of taking over the planet, weakening its defenses. And now it's time for him to join his father in ruling the world. Mark says no, that can't be true. He loves Debbie, and Nolan calls her more like a pet. Mark slaps his hand away and says he won't take over the planet, so they get ready to fight. Issue number 12. Omni-Man punches Mark and sends him flying through the city buildings. They collapse, killing hundreds of people. Omni-Man taunts Mark, telling him human life is insignificant and beneath them. Mark calls him a liar and strikes back. Omni-Man drills Mark down through into the subway, crashing the train. Mark kicks back, but it's not enough. Omni-Man carries Mark out to the sky to try and talk. He says their lives are so long, his time here was a speck, and he'll outlive every human he knows. He can always make more kids. They throw punches back and forth. Then Omni-Man starts beating the shit out of Mark, dragging him into the ocean and through the snowy mountains into an avalanche, where he beats him to a pulp. He asks what he'll have after 500 years, and Mark answers, "You, Dad." Omni-Man tears up and leaves the planet. Issue number 13. Cecil rescue team arrives on scene to pick up Mark. The whole incident was filmed live on the news, and everyone is worried. Cecil wakes up and introduces himself to Mark. Later, William and Eve meet at Mark's house, checking up on him. Cecil speaks to Debbie to ensure she has substantial income and compensate for what happened. Eve goes to the Guardians of the Globe headquarters looking for Mark. Robot says he'll do his best to locate him. Later, Cecil's assistant Donald talks to Robot, informing him he's put on probation from leading the team due to poor performance. Cecil checks in on Mark, who has now recovered, and gave him a tour of the Pentagon. He wants Mark to work for him in defending the planet. Debbie is extremely depressed after the events and just wants to go to bed. That night, Mark gets a beeper from Cecil notifying him of an incoming object from space. Mark flies out to meet Alan, who came to warn him about the Viltrumite on Earth. Mark catches him up to speed, and when he asks what he's gonna do, he says finish high school, I guess. And that wraps up the first volume of Invincible, the Ultimate Collection. This first book introduces us to many amazing and creative characters and begins to flesh out and build the world slowly, setting up several plot lines and concepts I'm excited to share more of. So, if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching, and be sure to like the video if you would like to see more. Alright, thank you. Goodbye.